الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والفجر وليال العشر والشفع والوتر والليل إذا يسر. Respectful my friends, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in various places of the Quran takes an oath and takes a qasam. And whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes an oath or a qasam on something, it is to show the importance of it. And not that taking a qasam is important, but a qasam in general, taking an oath, is something that should be the last resort. Ibrahim Nakhi rahimahullah ta'ala mentions that we used to be admonished whenever we would take qasams. We would be smacked on it and admonished. As people would have the habit of just taking the qasam all the time, Basim Allahi wallahi kuragi qasam, Allah qasam. It just becomes a trend due to which the ahmiyat, the importance of taking an oath on the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala diminishes. So a person shouldn't just have the habit of taking an oath. But here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where Allah ta'ala takes an oath in the Quran, it is to emphasize the importance of something. Here in this surah, Surah Fajr, wal Fajr wa layalin ashr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes an oath on the Fajr, on the dawn, wa layalin ashr, and 10 nights. Which shows us that there is importance of these 10 nights. That's why Allah ta'ala is taking an oath. What are these 10 nights? The Mufassireen of the opinion, including Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, that Layali Ash, the 10 nights, refers towards the first 10 nights of the month of Hijjah. And these 10 days of the beginning of Hijjah, which we are already into, which commenced from Monday, Sunday for some and Monday for others. So we are already into the third, fourth day of these days, auspicious days. This year from all, it is quite important that this is reminded and mentioned. Because when these months, the Zil-Qa'dah, Zil-Hajj, Zil-Hijjah, when these months occur and enter, we are always reminded of these, we know of these months, because there is the auspicious ibadat of Hajj that takes place. And there are so many people who are then preparing to go for Hajj, so we know many who are going for Hajj. So we are looking forward to them going for Hajj, and at the same time, seeing them preparing for Hajj, we also have that yearning and desire that one day we also go for Hajj or Umrah at least. But unfortunately, with the way conditions are, it's now 2 years. 2 years and there has been, Hajj has still continued, alhamdulillah, but there's been no access for Hajj. And it shouldn't be that because of that, this farziyat of Hajj even becomes one that we become forgetful of, that we even forget about Hajj. Because from the month of Ramadan we have this continuity where there is various ibadat that take place. And from already as soon as Ramadan finishes, people are preparing for Hajj. But Allah Ta'ala make it such that as soon as possible, we are all able to return to the Haramain Sharifain internationally. People are allowed to go for whether it's Hajj or Umrah. And by next year Hajj, there should be no excuse, hopefully, for it to be open. I don't think there was much of an excuse for it still to be closed this year. Last year it was still understandable the way conditions were, that people from overseas, foreigners, could not come for Hajj. However, this year is a lot different to last year, and various other events throughout the world itself is showing, indicating that within limits at least, some access for people outside the Mamlaka of Saudi should have been able to at least attend the Hajj. Allah Ta'ala knows best. Everything is in the hikmat, wisdom, and everything is only through the command of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. But Allah Ta'ala as soon as possible open up the doors of Hajj for the Ummah. So you do not want this ta'alluq with the Haramain, this love with the Haramain, that also diminishes as it is by means of the COVID. The Ummah has been put through great tests as well. And there is one is that test which is istirari, and another test is that which is ikhtiyari. Istirari refers towards that which is not in our control, that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala brings about such conditions upon us that it was not beyond our control. For instance, a person becomes ill. You do not choose to become ill. You do not say that today I want to become ill. It is something that comes its way. We do not have a choice. So that is something which is istirari, it is not in our control. And the other is that which is ikhtiyari, something that we still have an ikhtiyari choice on, something that we still have a role to play within it, and it isn't something that is beyond our capability or ability also, our choice, put it that way. This illness that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala spread or allowed to spread throughout the world, this is something which was istirari, something which was out of our control. And even now, it is still out of the control of mankind, humanity. Just when things were getting better, then another variant, and then another variant, which Allah is showing His qudrat and His power. So this isn't something that is within our control, that we can control it at all. So there are those things which are istirari, and then there are those things which are ikhtiyari. Alhamdulillah, through the grace of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, and we should all show gratitude to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, that in a matter of few days, inshallah, things will be a lot closer to normality, at least, a lot of restrictions, and specifically those restrictions pertaining to our ibadat. There were those restrictions which were to do with our social lives, maybe our business lives, our outside external lives, which was something that you had to bear and put up with. And then those restrictions were such that it had a bearing on our ibadat as well. Things that we did not want to do, but we had to do with regards to the distancing and these things, and various measures within our masjid. So things which were disrupted our ibadat. Now that was something which we'll say it was istirari, because it was not within our control. Why it wasn't within our control? Not because we wanted to stand apart from one another deliberately, we wanted it that way. But that was the law, that was the requirement, and checks were taking place. So these things, it is our duty that we abide by these things, and alhamdulillah, to a great extent, we have abided by it. And then you have that which I mentioned, which is ikhtiyari. Now that when these restrictions are lifted, now things are what ikhtiyari. And that's what the government is saying as well, isn't it? Now we leave everything to people's own discretion. They want to wipe their hands of it now. It's up to now all the people themselves, like you bring in, you enforce what you want to, you don't want to enforce. We'll leave it to you. Put that guilty conscience on you, isn't it? So now it's ikhtiyari. And now that it is ikhtiyari, it means that it is very, very important that our ibadat returns to what is supposed to be. All our masjids return, because during this period of time, I think if a survey is taken, the most rigid and strict were probably the masjids from all various different venues when it came to implementing the various COVID protocols. So let's hope as well. Just a couple of days ago, I asked somebody with regards to their masjid, which is quite strict on these matters. Even now, the north and west, so the south and west, similar as well. तो उनको मैंने पूछा कि भाई is there any changes, any elan after 19? He said, yeah, we're standing 2 meters apart. It will be 2 meters apart. ये जोक में उसने कहा बहरहाल. So some masjid of that nature as well have been very rigid. So now it is every person's duty that now that we are allowed to, that we come back to what is normal and get back to our ibadat in normal way. Show gratitude, first of all. We should all actually do shukr to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala that now these restrictions have been lifted from us. Allah Ta'ala is given us again that opportunity to do our ibadat the way it is supposed to. Now why I'm mentioning this is, it's not my duty to be giving you what the changes are with the COVID. The PM already has done that. But why I mention this is because of the psychological, as I was mentioning from Hajj as well, that this attachment over the last 2 years, because what does happen is that even there are those, as I mentioned to you, who go for Hajj. So because they are preparing to go for Hajj, they have that excitement of Hajj, and we seeing them as well, it creates that love for us as well to want to go as well. So that love for the Baytullah and the ziyarat of the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is always living every year. For the last 2 years we haven't had our annual Hajj program as well. So there is Elan, there's Hajj program. Hajj program takes place, those who are going for Hajj will attend, sometimes those who are not going for Hajj will attend even. So there is that mention, there will be bayanas also going on with regards to Hajj as well. So there is that constant mention of Hajj, so it is always there. Last 2 years we haven't been hearing these things. Even those who wanted to go to last year, now they know that it is all on hold, they aren't able to. There might be some who had saved the money and by now they might have even spent that money. Might have spent that money due to it, now Hajj is not farz on them as well. So because of these type of things, it has an effect on us psychologically as well. When the masjids are going to, and they should do, revert as to normal, without any social distancing from Fajr on the 19th of July, inshallah, it is very, very important that we stand shoulder to shoulder. We all stand shoulder to shoulder, and by doing so, as I mentioned, there is that which is ikhtiyari and that which is istirari, isn't it? Here now the hukam is, look, there is no restrictions which were istirari upon you. Now ikhtiyari is what? That you stand shoulder to shoulder. Yes, if a person wants to, and they want to maintain wearing a face mask, that is now their personal choice. There won't be any enforcement upon it. And a person is still afraid, then they can still keep the mask on and stand shoulder to shoulder. But what will happen is for sure, alhamdulillah, we for now, since the last change in restrictions, we still adopted the rule of 6. So to an extent, we've already got a bit into that, alhamdulillah, that habit of standing shoulder to shoulder. So hopefully for us the change won't be a drastic change. But for sure those masjids who didn't make this change even, who are still doing the distancing, for them it's going to be a big change now. For over a year this has been where you've been standing in such a manner, and now you're back to shoulder, people are going to find it different. For us as well, when we moved and reverted back as well, for the initial few days, it didn't take long because we've been doing it for your whole life now, alhamdulillah. But it did seem different. But alhamdulillah, it wasn't something that became disrupting or something that was difficult. But for many, it will still be something that will be disturbing. Disturbing on that reason, one is just for the sake of comfort-wise, that it was cool that each one just had his spot and space. He could be how he wanted, free as he wanted to as well. Not be worried about anybody next to him or so. The smell of another person next to him, the getting squeezed by anybody right and left, sandwiched by anybody, nothing at all. So there was that personal comfort, that is one. And the other is there were also those who felt a bit safer that way. And there are those who still, as I mentioned, psychologically who have been affected by the COVID, who will still be very apprehensive and may still be very fearful and scared, as we find as well when we move to the 6th rule as well. Jummah time, there were still, and there are still some individuals who preferred not to stand as the group of 6. Which shows that there are still those who, even though they may be those who are genuinely vulnerable, and then there are also those who are, as I mentioned, affected by psychologically. But now we have to understand that it is something that we cannot continue going on in this manner. When the government itself has understood this, that it isn't something that we can win. They've now understood that, look, we cannot challenge the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What Allah ta'ala, what God has planned, you cannot challenge that. So suppressing is impossible. Now it's a case of learning how to live with it and to get on with it. That is what they have also understood, which alhamdulillah is good for us as well. It benefits us most as well with regard to our ibadat. So when that is the case, then it is very, very important that we as Muslims who already from the beginning should have this yaqeen and tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we adopt this tawakkul and yaqeen and we come back to the sunnah of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the sunnah of deen. of how we're supposed to be standing shoulder to shoulder and performing our ibadat in such a manner. A person should not be fearful to attend the Eid Salah. A person should not be fearful for the following Jummah Salah as well, because there are going to be those who are fearful. As we mentioned, for them there is still the option that they can still wear a face mask as it is. And there will be those who will continue as well. As even now you will find that there are so many Muslims who are wearing face masks outside as well, where there is no law or legislation with regards to wearing face masks outside, as it is anyway, but they still are so fearful who are wearing face masks outside. So that just shows that there is still that fear factor that is there. And that too, in such heat, and that they're still able to maintain it. And so many of our mothers and sisters, now you will find that in the past it was a case of you can't wear the hijab. How are you going to breathe? How are you going to breathe with the hijab on? And now you will find they are the ones who are full covered. Even now they're still covered. They're still now covering. Even outside they're keeping covered as well. And they're managing to breathe as well. They're not falling unconscious or so. And you tell them about it, how are you going to breathe? How are you going to breathe? How are you going to do this? How are you going to see? How are you going to do this? So many excuses, isn't it? So many excuses. But now is a case of, now even they have proved that yes, it is possible. Even the non-Muslims have also understood that yes, it is possible. And maybe now they'll even appreciate the hardship and difficulty, and especially the men folk who are wearing the mask and suffering. At least they will now appreciate the difficulty of the women folk who fully cover themselves, isn't it? We are still able to maybe make some adjustments, but they are unable to. So at least we can even appreciate what their condition is. But this just came by with the way, as I mentioned, with regards to Hajj, the psychological effect of not having Hajj for the last 2 years can have on the Muslim Ummah. And on that, this change that will come about from the 19th, as I mentioned, there will be those who over a year have not stood shoulder to shoulder with somebody in Salat. Need to get back to that as well. Not be fearful of it at all. As I mentioned many months ago as well, that when we enter into the masjid, we say, Allahumma ftahli abwaaba rahmatik. So we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to open up for us the doors of His rahmat. So when we come in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is not a place that we should be fearful. It is not a place where we should be fearful. Look at the rest of people, those who do not have tawakkul and who do not have iman. How they are intermingling, how they are mixing as well, in large groups, in large amounts, and that, without any fear whatsoever. And those who have iman and tawakkul, and they have fear, this doesn't go hand in hand at all. This doesn't go hand in hand. Yes, a person takes precaution. This is what Islam and Deen teaches us as well. This is what we learn from the Sunnah of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well, the importance of precaution when there is need for precaution as well, and to be cautious with regards to these type of things. But at the same time, our yaqeen and tawakkul is solely in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Allah ta'ala make this change easy for the ummah as well. It's not going to be easy. And also for the committees of the masjid who have been implementing, trying hard as well. Many masjids genuinely have been very, you can say, helpful as well in a sense, who have been trying their utmost as well. There might be those who might have gone a bit overboard as well. There might be those who have gone overboard as well. Just in a recent conversation as well with some ulama in that with regards to changes and that, and also guidelines to masjids, that it is important that masjids, as all other departments, will return to normality. And whether they do or not, it is very important that we do and don't expect or put any undue pressure on the musallis, on those things which the government has not put any pressure on, which are no longer legal from, or law, you can say, no longer law from the 19th. So this person was complaining as well that how overboard we've been. That even in winter months, all the windows, even in Fajr Salat, all the windows used to be open in the winter. Where people were shivering in Salat. People were shivering in Salat. But at least one positive is that somewhere, one matter which we were neglecting is that cleanliness and ventilation in many of our masjids was always an issue. Where our masjids would become a sauna. Ventilation was always an issue in many of our masjids. Cleanliness as well. normal cleaning would take place, but when you would come to maybe disinfecting type of hygiene, deep cleaning, that was something maybe we didn't, or not just masjids, but many places did not really pay heed to. At least this is something that we have learned, that this is something that we need to at least maintain. But then there needs to be the right balance as well. Not that now it's freezing winter and that you keep the doors open. Many masjids, the doors used to be open, left open, in the main doors would be left open. Windows would also be left open in such a manner. Now it's fine, you keep them all open, but in winter it just causes the grief to people. So very important now that our minds get back to where we were before, and that we are able to return to normality and do our ibadat the way it is supposed to be, not feel afraid of standing shoulder to the person next to us. It is not in the control of that person for themselves to get infected, and neither is it in their control to infect any other individual. It is all in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who gets infected and who becomes a means of maybe infecting another individual. It all is only in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as after all, who infected the first person. It was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's qudrat, Allah ta'ala's will, that whoever was the first one who became infected, as Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned to a person, to this villager who mentioned Nabi Kareem with regards to his herd of camels, who were infected, who had a disease which was infectious as well. To which Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that who is the one who infected the first camel. So there was no camel before that one who infected it. As I was mentioning to you, coming back to the actual topic of the verse that I recited to you, and how important it is that although there is no Hajj internationally, but just like we would normally, maybe the couple of Jummahs before Hajj, there would be those lectures on Hajj, that those lectures and bayans should still continue in order to remind people still of the farz of Hajj, because we can become very forgetful of it, and this thing is happening there because we're not really into it. We won't even realize, yes, Hajj did take place. And also with regards to Hajj, then those amal and those ibadat which pertain to those who are non-Hajjis. Those who are non-Hajjis. And this is the beauty of our deen, that it isn't something that is just exclusive. That those who have gone for Hajj, that they are just going to do the ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the rest are going to be deprived of any different or extra ibadat at all. But these 10 days, auspicious days, are such that Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions that there is no amal that a person does in these days that are greater and most beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That the amal ibadat that a person does in these days are most beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala said to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "O Nabi of Allah, even that of jihad." That even that of jihad, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, yes, even greater than that of jihad, unless it is person who is in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who spends his life and his wealth in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and returns without any of the one or two of them. Aside from that individual, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned what? That these amal are greater than that of jihad as well. That is how auspicious these days are. And how auspicious these days are, that these are the only days where you will get so many different ibadat gathered together. So many other ibadat gathered together. In the month of Ramadan, we have the farz salat, and then we had the farz som. But these two were gathered together. There was no qurbani, there is no qurbani in the month of Ramadan. There is no hajj during the month of Ramadan. So it is a combination. The farz of salat is all the time, but there was the additional farz of that of som. These are those days wherein all the farais, aside even som as well, all the farais have been put together. How? That's not farz som, but there is a fasting as well. As Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions, that the fasting of one day during these 10 days is equivalent to the fasting of one entire year. One entire year. And the non-Haji, that person who is not for Hajj, on the day of Arafat. So even the Haji who on the day of the 9th of Hijjah, who is there in Arafat, he was carrying out the most important rukn of Hajj, the Wuquf Arafat. But those who are non-Hajis are not left out at all totally, that look, you have nothing to do with Arafat and what's happening there. But for them, Nabi Kareem said there is a mustahab fasting. That a person who fasts on the 9th of the Hijjah, and this is very important as well, that the fast of the day of Arafat refers towards the 9th of the Hijjah, which means whichever country you are in, according to your moon sighting, whichever day is the 9th is when is your day of Arafat. Not mean that you have to correspond with the Hajj, and whenever Arafat is in Saudi Arabia, then you have to make your Arafat elsewhere as well. No, 9th of Hijjah, whenever it is your 9th of Hijjah, whoever fasts during that day, Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentions that Allah Ta'ala will forgive his past and future sins of 1 year. Past year and the future year's sins, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala will forgive. And those sins referred to as a person's minor sins, not major sins. Major sins you have to make tawbah for it. The minor sins that a person has committed will be forgiven on that 1 day of fasting. So whoever fasts, one is the fast of Arafat, and whoever fasts during these days gets the reward of equivalent of fasting for an entire year. So there is that fasting that takes place as well. Salat is already there that a person does. And then along with that, then you have what? You have the Qurbani, which is something that comes only once in a year. And you cannot do Qurbani any other time but on the 10th, 11th and 12th of Hijjah. Qurbani of an animal any other day will be Nafal Qurbani. Will be Nafal Qurbani, it will not be the Wajib Qurbani. So these are the days where Allah has combined Qurbani as well. And then these are the days of Hajj. So just imagine how many ibadat Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has combined during these days. So that the Haji benefits as well. And the non-Haji has also so many ibadat that they get on with during the days that the Hajis are doing their Hajj. We have our ibadat that we get on with as well. And then just the way the Haji has what a slogan you can see, a kalima that they are repeating, the labbaik, labbaik, the talbiyah that they are repeating all the time. The non-Hajis may feel that, look, we want to be saying something as well. We want to be saying something as well. So for us is what? We don't say labbaik. But there is no labbaik but for the Haji. Nowadays it becomes fashion, everybody wants to say labbaik, labbaik, labbaik here and there and everywhere. But there is no labbaik anywhere else. The Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala did not say labbaik or have a talbiyah for anything else. The only talbiyah is that which is when the Haji or the person in Umrah adorns the ihram, that's when you have the talbiyah. That is the only time that you have labbaik, talbiyah. Aside from that, it was just a case of when Nabi Karim would address a person, there they would say labbaik wa sa'di, which was a saying amongst Arabs. Yes, I am, in other words, hazir khidmat hu, as we will say in Urdu, that I am present. So otherwise there is no other talbiyah at all for any other occasions. So those who remain at home feel that there is no talbiyah for us. So for that Allah Ta'ala has given us what? The takbir at-tashriq. The day the Hajis will be doing the talbiyah, you from the morning, the fajr of the 9th, the day of Arafah, 9th of Hijjah, from that moment after every salat, you'll read the talbiyah. You'll read the takbir at-tashriq. Loudly you'll read the takbir at-tashriq. So that the whole, the masjid hears it, the whole, the tashriq is taking place. So that is for who? For those who are non-Hajis. So in this way Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has ordained various ibadat for those who are the Hajis and those who are non-Hajis as well. A combination of so many great ibadat of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala takes place during these days. So these auspicious days, as I mentioned, we have already begun. The ibadat, whatever we do during the day, is most beloved to Allah Ta'ala, which means that we should become punctual in the ibadat of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Whatever extra we can do, we should do that. And Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam also mentions that the ibadat of one night during these 10 is equal to that of the night of Qadr. In the month of Ramadan, the night of Qadr was only one. Here Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentioned that each night, the 10 nights, whoever does the ibadat of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala will get the reward of the night of Qadr. So just imagine how many nights of Qadr a person can get if he does ibadat during these nights. And with the nights being so short, it is very easy for a person to get the ibadat of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. You do not need to spend a lot of time, just the normal time that you do reading your Isha Salat in the masjid. And just an extra 2 rakat here and there that you read after as well. A bit of extra tasbih, a bit of Quran. And that is sufficient for a person to get the reward of spending the entire night in the ibadat of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. So in this way, just the fact that a person is regular, and the haqiqat is, my dear friends, when we hear these type of fazilat, virtues of doing ibadat, one is the extra ibadats, as in doing qurbani, doing hajj and fasting. These are something extra. But when it comes to auspicious nights and auspicious days, when Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentioned with regards to the importance of doing the ibadat of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, those who are already in a habit of doing the ibadat of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, they don't need to really get so concerned about it. They do not need to think that they could miss out on it, because the regular ibadat itself is going to be sufficient for an individual. Yes, all the more that a person exerts themselves, but the normal ibadat that a person does is sufficient for an individual. It is those of us who are on, off, hit and miss, who are not doing the regular ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who then have to now keep it in our minds and remember and put it in our phones and everything as well, that look, this night is an auspicious night, this is going to be this night, this is going to be that night. And we now have to remind ourselves, no, it's big night, it's big night. We are asking, when's big night, isn't it? When these nights come, people ask, when is 15th of Shaban, when is Muharram Ashura, when is this? So we are asking when is it. Why? Because we do not want to miss out on the fazilat of it. So we're very concerned of it, we don't want to miss out on the fazilat of it. But if we are already in that routine of doing the ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we'll naturally normally get it. That's why you'll find that when a person studies the ahwal, the condition of our akabirin, of how they will spend the month of Ramadan, you will have the different halats of how they will spend the month of Ramadan. But when you read that of Hazrat Hakim Muhammad rahmatullah alayhi, Hazrat Hakim Uthami rahmatullah alayhi, Hazrat Hakim rahmatullah alayhi's ma'amul in Ramadan and his ma'amul outside Ramadan would be the same. His ma'amul in and out of Ramadan would be the same. Many of our akabirin, their ma'amul in Ramadan would change. To a great extent it would change. But Hazrat Hakim Muhammad rahmatullah alayhi, his would not change. And the reason why his would not change, not that he was any better than the others, the Kabirin who increased the ibadat, they were doing correct as well. But Hazrat Hakim Umar rahmatullahi, why his would not change is because his ma'amul itself on every day would be one that didn't really need much changing. Because in the month of Ramadan already, is tirari you can say, without choice as it is, you're already increasing with fasting and the tarawih as it is. So that is going to say, it's not a case of you remaining on the same level, the same amount. Automatically these two ibadat is going to increase anyway. It's going to increase what you normally do. So an increase already comes. But it's not a case of us, the whole year we don't read the Quran and now in the month of Ramadan we start reading the Quran. Whole year we don't give sadaqah, we only start giving sadaqah in the month of Ramadan. Whole day we don't see towards others, only now in the month of Ramadan. So in the same way, the whole year we're not punctual with our ibadat. But now when these auspicious days and nights of the Hijjah come, now we become punctual on reading the ibadat and doing the ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then what happens is, now we become so punctual that we think that it is farz upon us or it is haram upon us because we're doing qurbani, or that the fact these are days that we can't clip our nails and we cannot par the nails and we cannot shave the moustache or we cannot cut the hair and we become so punctual on these things, on those rulings which are mustahab for that individual. And the fuqaha mentioned that this ruling is for that person who is doing qurbani himself with his own hand, on that individual. To the extent that even that person who is getting the qurbani done on behalf of his family members, the ruling does not apply on them either. That only that person, for that person, it is mustahab that they do not cut their hair and their nails and that till their qurbani is done, that they themselves have done the qurbani. And one of the reasons for this, the hikmah for this is again, for that Allah wants a bit of mushabahat, similarity with those who are in ihram as well. But the difference is that they are muhrim, for them these things are haram upon them. They are in the state of ihram, and this person is not in the state of ihram. So it is not haram on this individual, it is only in state of ihram. But it is still mustahab for them to show similarity with those who are doing the hajj. But we regard that to be something that is further wajib. And we want to be uphold upon that, because a lot of people are under the misunderstanding that this is further wajib upon us. It is haram, you can't do that. But you forget that, you're supposed to be reading your salat, which you don't worry about. Which you should be. And there are those who are practicing this, but are not doing the qurbani even. Because this misinformation has got so widespread that people have the opinion that during these days, this is haram mutlaq, like something else is haram. These things are haram during these days. Irrelevant of qurbani being wajib upon them, and then despite that they're not doing the wajib qurbani. So that isn't the case. During these days, the salat is still farz upon us. For the men of folk, salat with jamaat is still wajib upon us. And if a person is sahib and nisab, then for them the qurbani is still wajib upon them. Those cannot change. That ruling still implies, it still remains upon an individual. We cannot bypass that. So in this way, those who are already in the ritual of doing the ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should maintain that. And by maintaining that, they will automatically get all the reward of doing the ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during these days. They'll get the reward automatically of it. The night ibadat itself will qualify them for getting the reward of the night of Qadr. Yes, fasting on the 9th, the day of Arafat will increase them in reward as well with regards to forgiveness of sins. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken an oath, وَالْفَرْجِ وَلَيَالٍ عَشْرٍ. And the fact that Allah ta'ala takes an oath on these nights, this shows the importance of it. And when that is the case, then we should also have in our hearts as well the importance of it, because of the different types of ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes place, of how there is, and the major ibadats that are taking place during these days are that of which have something mushtarak, something similar in them all, which are collective in one thing, and that is what? Sacrifice and qurbani. There is sacrifice in qurbani. Whether it is a person who stays at home and does qurbani, or whether it is the one who goes for Hajj and the Haji, something unanimous between them all is the fact of doing qurbani. Because the Haji who goes for Hajj as well is also doing qurbani. They are doing qurbani of their wealth, they are sacrificing their wealth to go for Hajj, and they are sacrificing their time as well. And when they go there as well, there is so much comfort that a person is sacrificing as well. The normal meal schedule, so many things that a person makes qurbani of when a person goes for Hajj. So there is a lesson of qurbani throughout the Hajj. And in the qurbani itself, the purpose of the qurbani is for us of the lesson of qurbani that took place by Sayyidina Ibrahim and Sayyidina Ismail alayhi salatu wassalam. So the lessons throughout of this is qurbani, to show us that in the life of a believer, how much qurbani a person needs to make. And on this, going back to the topic that I've been mentioning over the last couple of Majlis and last week as well, that when it comes to priority should always be given to the akhirat over this world. Priority must be given to the akhirat over this world, and in doing so, a person will need to make qurbani. That's the way a person, for instance, Hajj becomes first upon them, but in order to go for Hajj, a person is going to have to take time out from work. If a person has business, and it might be a case of that it might be unpaid leave as well that they have to take, it's going to be a qurbani that you need to undertake for it. And the other is what to give preference to. Making qurbani of that leave, that unpaid or getting paid, it's a choice. Now you've got that option, there isn't it? The test imtihan that is there. There is a possibility that a person may need to even close their business in order to go for Hajj. Again, what do you give preference to? That of Hajj which is for the akhirat, or for this world, saying no, until it's not the right time for me to close the business. We've locked down and everything, and now reopening, it's not the right time. People will think, isn't it? It's not the right time for me to close. What do you give preference to? Do you give preference to this world, or do you give preference to the akhirat? This is where the challenge always lies. And it is giving preference to the akhirat that matters the most. So an incident comes to mind. During the time of Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala, he had a student, I.T.A ibn Rabah rahimahullah. And I.T.A ibn Rabah, who was a student of Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala, and not only that, but Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala had actually enslaved him, put shackles on him. He was his slave, but he was one who didn't want to study. So what he did is that he would shackle him, and he would shackle him, and he would make him, he made him his student. And then he became such a great muhaddis and faqih as well, isn't it? So it helps, isn't it? Which we need to do as well, isn't it? The Cubs have been telling these guys, it's time that we need to shackle them, that they don't leave here before 3:30. So, but the benefit is that he was shackled, but then he became such a great alim din, isn't it? The Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala would take knowledge from him. Through being shackled in this manner by Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala. Let's say Darulum, the Madaris, and you get to class, they lock the doors. The Darul Iqam is locked in that, because so you can't go back there. खैर पहले होगा, अब तो नहीं होता है ऐसा. Offset won't allow that. अब तो और चीज़ होता है. Before you know, there will be theatres and cinemas in the Darulums as well. Allah Hifazat. But he mentions that one occasion when they were sat, Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala said to him that shall I show you a lady of Jannah? Shall I show you a woman of Jannah? Yes, show me, yes. Who? And a black lady had walked past. A black lady had walked past. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas pointed towards her and said, she is a woman of Jannah. She is a woman of Jannah. Hamari deen mein, alhamdulillah, there is no racism. There is no racism at all. No matter what color of skin you are, you have Iman, everyone will go in Jannah. Isn't it? And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam already gave bashara to this lady. Nabi gave bashara to another black lady who would sweep in the masjid. Nabi gave bashara to Bilal radiallahu ta'ala. But Nabi Bilal was walking in front of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in Jannah. If this deen was that of racism, Bilal radiallahu ta'ala would not be walking ahead of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in this, what Nabi has seen, and that so much fazilat would not have been given at all. But he says, she is a woman of Jannah. He says, how? He said, on one occasion she came to Nabi Kareem sallallahu ta'ala sallam, and she said to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam that she suffers from epileptic fits. That she suffers from fits. So she said to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam that, O Nabi of Allah, make dua that Allah Ta'ala frees me from this illness. Make dua that Allah Ta'ala frees me from this illness and Allah Ta'ala grants me shifa. What did Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam say to her? Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to her that, look, if you want, I'll give you a choice. If you want, I'll make dua for you and you'll be cured from this illness. Or if you want, make sabr on this and enter into Jannah. If you want, I'll make dua and you'll be saved from it, you'll be cured. Or if you want, make sabr and you're guaranteed Jannah. Such a big choice is given to her. Such a big choice is given to her. Whereas, and she knows that it's not a case of, well, it's 50-50 both sides. But here's a case of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam going to make dua, then that dua is definite, isn't it? If she knew that as well, that if Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam makes dua, Allah grant her shifa, her shifa is guaranteed for her. But what did she think at that time? That yes, if I am granted shifa, then that is fine. I have got the benefit of the dua of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam just whilst I am living temporarily here in this world. Whereas instead, if I choose to do sabr on this illness, then I am guaranteed eternal Jannah. So what the choice was given to her, and what did she give preference to? She gave preference to that of the akhirah. She understood the haqiqat of this world and the hereafter. That when the choice is given there, what do we give preference to? If there are ways wherein we can get the best of this world, then by all, or both worlds, then by all means. But in the case of either this world, the benefit of this world, or the benefit of the akhirah, we give the vote to. And we give the choice, we take the choice of benefit in this world, that our dunya at least becomes comfortable. Akhirat, wo to baad mein ho, dekha jayega. Wo dekha jayega. Allah is Ghafoor Rahim. There's a case of Allah is Ghafoor Rahim, but wo dekha jayega. Here she is a Sahabi after all. She is a Sahabiya, but despite that, she's got that option. And here her option is also guaranteed that Nabi Kareem will make dua, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam's dua will be accepted and she'll be granted. To which what did she say? Oh Nabi of Allah, I prefer to do sabr upon it. I prefer to do sabr upon it. But then further what did she say to us? But Nabi said, but one thing. Think I'll do sabr upon it as well. But when I do fall unconscious, out of my, not in my control, there are times wherein then my aura might become open to people. My aura might become open to people. Oh Nabi, you must make that dua for me. That remains concealed. It's not in my control. I'm willing to undertake this. My honor and my modesty, O Nabi of Allah, that should remain intact. But these were the women of modesty. These were the women of modesty. There's such a woman here, a black woman has so much understanding of Deen and Islam. And not only that, but honor for herself, respect for herself. This is where we say, Mera jisam, meri marzi. Isn't it? But this is meri jisam, meri marzi, meaning how she wants it, my jisam and my modesty. Whereas she would not be sinful for it. It's not in her control how she falls down. But she so much wanted that, oh Nabiullah, my body and my modesty. Isn't it? Mera jisam, mera haya. My modesty should remain, oh Nabiullah, but make that dua for me at least. That my modesty remains intact. And Nabi Sallam made dua for her for that. Nabi Sallam made dua for her for that. And Allah Ta'ala accepted that as well. She remained and she did sabr upon it. But alhamdulillah, her aura remained concealed. And today our women folk are such who, hers was, as I mentioned again, that ikhtiyari and istirari, isn't it? In the beginning. Hers was istirari, it wasn't in her control at all. And ours is a case of ikhtiyari, we want to show and open ourselves where we are able to conceal ourselves. That's the choice that we are taking. That's the choice that we have taken as well, isn't it? And that even those who genuinely cover their face because they are scared and fearful, or they take a precaution, and there are those who feel that no, this is nice now. It's also a bit of a fashionable thing, so there will be those who covering their faces now out of fashion in that. That's the way those who keep the beard because it becomes fashion and not because it is the sunnah of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Zulfa becomes fashion, people will keep that as well. Now the beard has become fashion, then there are so many that are keeping the beard. And that happens as well as you see so many youngsters, when you just see them, you say, mashallah. Isn't it? Mashallah. But then, as soon as they get into the cars, that starts there and everything, they stop. You just look, mashallah. Mashallah. You think that this person is a deendar individual, isn't it? But then you find, you see how that individual is, isn't it? And then we're the ones supplying the goods to people and that. And all other things that they're doing, but like in decade height, you think that this person looks mashallah. He looks deendar. But far from it. Whatever's fashion, that is fashion. Trousers as well. If trousers become such that trousers now, if it becomes fashion to have them above the ankles, we'll start doing that as well. Till then it'll be a case of, no, who's going to dress in such a manner? And if it so happens that the jabba becomes fashion, because you look at non-Muslims, everything goes, every fashion goes, they wear everything as well, isn't it? They start wearing the pagri and the turbans, will start wearing that as well. We'll start wearing that as well. They start deciding where to wear a lungi, we'll start wearing the lungi as well. Is it champal to pehante hi, isn't it? Before they used to laugh as our people. I mean, when I went to India a couple of years back, 2007, but then a couple of years. तो उस वक्त हमने देखा कि it's changed, how it changed. There they wear socks and shoes, Skechers, and here they wear sandals. Well, Barak time, and then they would be laughing about these people wearing sandals in winter here, and there where you would expect that look, people will wear sandals. Now you go there, they've changed. They're wearing socks and they're wearing shoes, and here the non-Muslims are wearing sandals, and that's in winter as well, isn't it? The case of how things change, isn't it? Like, unfortunately, in this change, some good changes are coming into them, and it's going this in such a way that some goodness of ours is being adopted by non-Muslims, and things that they have now leaving aside to adopt those good things are coming around to us. This is what is happening, isn't it? So trends that they are dropping, we are picking, and what we are dropping, they are picking as well, which is very unfortunate. So Barani modesty, as I was mentioning to you, how look the understanding that Allah Ta'ala had given her, how can she not be a woman of Jannah? How can she not be a woman of Jannah? And that's what Abdul Abbas, you want to see a woman of Jannah, look at her. So here, this is an example of how, when she had that opportunity and the choice, she gave preference to what? She gave preference to the Akhirah over that of this world. And this is a lesson during these days that we are also given as well. That when that option was put forward to Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu salam, he didn't give preference to this world, that, oh Allah, my son, I need him, he's going to be there to help me, assist me, and all the benefit that is there. No, he looked at the benefit of what the Akhirat will be. Sayyidina Hajar and Sayyidina Ibrahim leaving his family behind, the sacrifice of Sayyidina Hajar as well. All of these things were what? For the sake of the hereafter, the sacrifice that they made one after the other with Ibtala Ibrahim Rabbuh bi kalimatin fatammahun. Not just one, but two, but three, many, one after the other. So many different qurbani and tests were put upon Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, one after the other. He accepted those, he fulfilled those. But he didn't get the honor of Khalilullah, Khalil Rahman, just like that as well. That comes by achieving something, isn't it? You don't just kick a ball here and there and get lucky with it, and on that expect to get knighted and get this and that on that. Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam got the knighthood of what? He got the label and he got the title of Khalilullah. Such an auspicious. Khalil is not just friend. Khalil means a very close friend of an individual. And he's a friend of who? Not any person, but he's Khalil of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But for that he showed what? His loyalty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for him to be Khalilullah. We call ourselves Abdullah. Each Muslim is Abdullah, isn't it? But look, where is our loyalty? We're not even worthy of being called Abdullah, not Khalilullah. By Abdullah, we're not even worthy of it. Abdullah is what the servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we are Abdul Nafs. We are Abdul Nafs, isn't it? Where he suits us, but Nafs ke ghulam, we just have as a Nafs, we'll go as and how the Nafs is, as and how the Nafs is. By Qurbani, why should we do Qurbani for? Why should I waste money for? And if you're going to send the money overseas and we're not going to get the meat of it either, so what's the point doing Qurbani? What's the point killing so many animals? So many excuses we'll do instead of what? And for us it's case of what? By the Qurbani is just of that animal. And there Sayyidina Ibrahim ﷺ was told what to do, Qurbani of his son. If anybody had to object and make excuses, it should have been Sayyidina Ibrahim ﷺ. And so many excuses could have been made at that time. And then not only that, but when that was presented to Sayyidina Ismail ﷺ, there too he could have said, but you've got another child, Ishaq, isn't it? What about him? Why not Ishaq? Why me for? And why me after all? What wrong have I done? By get me the Google social services. But nothing of that nature, no complaints at all. But what did he say? Never mind. Sadadidni insha'Allahu minas sabirin. Khalas. That's fine. If Allah wills, then I will be from those who make sabr. So you do what you need to do and I do what I do. That's why when we always talk about this incident, we mention Sayyidina Ibrahim, but we should not forget the sacrifice of Sayyidina Ismail. Both Qurban is so much. Because a father to sacrifice his child is like sacrificing himself after all. And for the son himself, who is still in his young age, for him to be willing to be slaughtered in that manner and to give to him, present himself to be sacrificed, but that is also a major thing as well. We should not forget the Qurbani of both. فَلَمَّا أَسْلَمَا, as Allah Ta'ala mentions, not just one. As Allah Ta'ala mentions, when both of them submitted to the will of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. So it wasn't just the one, it was both. And on the reward of Sayyidina Ismail's Qurbani, Allah Ta'ala accepted him for Nabuwwat as well. Allah Ta'ala granted him the title of Zabihullah. Allah Ta'ala granted him the mantle of prophethood as well because of that Qurbani that he had undertaken. And the lesson that they both gave us, the father and son, is what? Of what? One is that of Qurbani, and the other is what? Of loyalty to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Loyalty to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, which is a ever-living, a constant lesson for us all. That if we regard ourselves to be servants of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, then we need to show that we are loyal to Allah Ta'ala. And our loyalty to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala will always be put to test. It will always be put to test. And each time it is put to test, that's where our Qurbani comes about. Do we prove that our loyalty to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala? Do we show that we are wafadar, loyal to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala? That is a challenge that we undertake throughout our lives. And it is on that then what we get. It is on that we will get Jannah. It's on that we will get the enjoyment of the hereafter. On proving our loyalty to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. That's why we have the Sunnah as Nabi Kareem Sallallahu, the Sahaba, the Anbiya alayhim salatu salam in their lives made various different Qurbanis. Various Qurbanis they made. But this is one Qurbani of the previous Anbiya alayhim salatu salam, which was so liked that it was adopted in our Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as well. When Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, what is this Qurbani? Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, it is the Sunnah of your father Ibrahim. It was so liked by Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. وَتَرَكْنَاهُمْ فِي الْآخِرِينَ, Allah Ta'ala mentions. But no, this is such a Qurbani, such a legacy. By legends, these are legends. These are true legends. Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, Sayyidina Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam, the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, like in the Quran tafsir we're doing at the moment, the waqiyat of the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, what we did last Friday of Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, but these are legends. These are true legends. Of look at the devotion to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. So these are true legends, and these are their legacy. That Allah Ta'ala loves so much that Allah Ta'ala said He'll keep it till al-akhirin, till the day of Qiyamah. There will be people who will continue doing this throughout the world in order to do what? To remember the Qurbani of Sayyidina Ibrahim and Sayyidina Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam. But at the same time for us is that lesson That when they were so loyal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then how we should also remain loyal to Allah ta'ala. Allah ta'ala grants all understanding and tawfiq. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.